Well, hello class, welcome to the weekend. I guess we're a day in. Hope it's been good so far. I want to do a couple things very briefly. I want to talk about a couple of questions you have, talk about grades, and then I want to get to our final assignment. So quickly, let me just say this about grades. Some of you are wondering, where do I stand? I just spent a considerable amount of time updating grades. So everything for the most part, except for I still have your well-being papers, and I'm going to talk about that, should be updated as far as what we have completed so far this term. Okay, so everything that's due this week in Unit 7, I'm not grading yet because some of you are still turning things in. Okay, so we'll hold off on that. The well-being assessment papers, your response. Let me just say this. Someone emailed me. They said, I'm concerned about my grade going into the final week. If you did the assignment, okay, I just wanted you to hear this. If you did the assignment and you did it as you were assigned to do it, you should be fine. Okay. I hesitate in how I communicate this. This is not a pass-fail class, right? It's not a credit, no credit class. But have you done the work? Have you invested in the work? I'm not saying let's take away grades, although sometimes I think grades we incentivize in different ways that are perhaps not the best way. But I just, as I've mentioned before, I have a different way of thinking about grading. Did you actually learn, right? So, in this exercise we talked about evaluation. Some of you asked or brought up the idea of evaluation. And I understand the purpose. In fact, I wrote in response to the student that brought them up, I said, regarding idea evaluations, or evals, and autocorrect on my iPad, it autocorrected it to evils, which, do with that what you will. I understand why they exist. I think that they serve a purpose, but I don't think that they judge the most important thing, and that is your student learning. And it's really hard for you to be able to then come back and assess through evaluation what it was that you actually learned, right? Did you learn these things? And I would look at the mark of did you learn them as if you fast forward, okay? Class ends, fast forward, your program's over, maybe even a couple years from now, I don't know, 5-6 years from now. What do you remember from your program? If there's things that stand out to you in this class that you are still utilizing in the work that you do with clients, then I feel like this has been a successful learning experience. When your artifacts were turned in, one of the students in class said, it was so fun to think outside the box. It was so fun to think creatively, a bit abstractly, right? I don't see it, I love abstract for the win, right? I love abstract. I love ambiguity. I love kind of creativity and innovation. But at the same time, I don't see what we did in that assignment as being abstract or being ambiguous or being creative. I see that as being just, I'm seeing life through the lens of career development. And that's what I want us to get at. I want these to be things that stay with you and that you hold on to. So are idea evaluations helpful? Sure. But I think they miss on what they really could be judging, and that's your overall student learning. Now, I understand they're assessing my ability to communicate the content, to create a class. The challenge is, as you know this too, is idea evaluations are really created for in the classroom experience. When you have an online experience, it's a very different experience. So I think all of us are taking those things with a grain of salt. Obviously, respond as you need to. Give feedback. I'm always open to that. I also understand that it's a very misunderstood modality of delivery for a class. And so what I'm seeing in your responses, in the ways you're thinking, the way you're communicating, the questions that are being asked, your takeaways, your actionable items, all those, your conversations with classmates tells me that this has been a successful class, and I'm loving what I'm seeing happen. So thank you for your engagement with that. A couple questions about environment. What role does family or even TV? What role does the media play? What role do our environmental factors, the things around us, the people around us, play into one's overall career development? I think it's huge. I think it starts early. I think it starts as a child. I don't think I know it starts as a child and it continues on through life. We look at a lot of these theories, and there are some questions about can these theories that tend to be kind of directed towards a younger, maybe upwards of 25 or so emerging adulthood population, can they be applicable to an older generation? Absolutely. I think that one of the things we're looking at when we are developing theories or techniques is we're kind of targeting a specific age group, but at the same, and really that gets at norming. So we're taking assessments. So you asked some questions about assessments and some different theories there. And the question is, are they normed for, how are they normed? Are they normed for North American male, 45 and older. Well, if they are, then all of a sudden they became, in some ways, irrelevant and really just not helpful for anybody else that's outside of that norm, right? Outside of that realm of age group and gender and ethnicity and so forth. So if I'm giving that assessment to somebody in, let's say, sub-Saharan Africa, then it doesn't really mean anything. So there's an assessment that I'm about to get certified in, I think anyway, called Arsenal. And Arsenal is something that tests leaders with their stress level and decision making when under stress. So I have a friend that's from Ghana, and he completed the assessment. He said it's a great assessment certification. However, it's normed for Americans. And he's thinking, I want to go back to Ghana and use this assessment, but it just doesn't make any sense. So what we have to do is we have to consider those realities when we're giving assessments to clients. It's really important, actually, that we understand the norms, how our assessments that we're using, our interventions, how they're normed, so that we can assign them properly to clients, but also to explain if someone's like, I just dead set, I want to complete this assessment. And you go, I know it's not norm for you. You're kind of your demographic. I think in some ways we're responsible for knowing how to explain that, to kind of extrapolate and pull out the information that is applicable to then take it a bit deeper. So those are great questions. I remember growing up as a kid, going back to environment, and just remember being with my best friend Ben in his house and watching his family interact and how they had things I didn't have. They had big TV. We didn't have a big TV. They had nice cars. We didn't have nice cars. What was it about his parents? His mom stayed at home, didn't work. My mom worked, and my dad worked. And so it was like, why don't we have the things that Ben's parents have? Well, I come to find out his dad was a physical therapist. His earning potential was higher than my parents' earning potential combined. And so those were things that factored. I didn't obviously become a physical therapist. I'm in the helping professions in some ways, but it was definitely something that influenced me. And so it starts early and it continues on through life. And even though things may be from a theoretical framework that we're working with, normed for certain demographics, I think that we need to figure out what it is that works best for us to utilize with our clients, and how do we help to explain that when we're working with clients, to say, hey, I know this is for a younger person, but given where you are from a career maturity standpoint, I think this might actually be really helpful and beneficial for the overall work that you are doing or that you're attempting to do as we move forward in your career. So great questions. Thank you. Keep them coming. Man, it was awesome to read your thoughts, awesome to read your artifacts, your conversations, to interact with you. Such great. I mean, really, just this is gold what you're giving me in this class. So thank you for that. Let me talk really briefly then. So we got grades. Grades are coming. They'll be fully updated by the end of this weekend. We talked about some questions that you've asked. Thank you for those. Your artifacts were fantastic. Loved what you shared. So I want to talk about our final assignments. Okay, we have 2, and these assignments have. Really, they've evolved over amount of time. And I mentioned what I'm looking at from a student learning standpoint. These are really great indicators of where we are. The first part of your final assignment is super straightforward, super simple. You can read through it. 2-page document detailing the most significant learnings and takeaways from the semester. What theories stood out the most, what techniques will stay with you, what will practically be utilized in future counseling sessions and relationship, etc. The document should include a brief overview, discussion of what was thought of career counseling and career development before the class began, and what is it that you now think of the field and study after the class has ended. Okay, what new ideas were learned on the whole throughout this class. Really simple, straightforward. Okay. This document should make clear what was learned and why it was important to the student. Consider what someone that is unfamiliar with the class or the content might think after looking at the document. Should they feel informed and as if the document portrayed a student that invested in the class and learned as much as they could? Remember that you get out of the class, and this is from the very beginning, we've said this, what you put into the class. As the class begins, students should start with the end in mind, so hopefully you did that, and this document should reflect all of those learnings. Okay, so you can read through that. The second portion is a treatment plan, okay? And this is a chance for you to practice, okay? And I want you to use some freedom in this. There's going to be some autonomous response here, and then I've given you some parameters, which we'll talk about here in a bit, okay? We're going to look at the case of Leslie. So you find the case of Leslie in Appendix B There's actually a full chapter in a book by Swanson and Fuhad. So it was career development theories or something like that, learning through case studies. And so a lot of case studies I used to use in this class came from that text. And I really liked what Leslie's case looked like and what it brought to the table as far as how we then would respond to it. Everything you need is in the description. Okay, there's one exception to that. And one of the things that I'll say in the description of the assignment is you may not have all of the information about Leslie's specific situation, so you may need to kind of call an audible and create a couple of things that are in there. Okay, so let's talk about this. For purposes of the second part of the assignment, students will compose a treatment plan using at least 2 theories or techniques that were discussed in the synthesis document. So part 1, okay? So what you're doing in part 1 is building on what you're going to then do in part 2. The treatment plan will be in response to the case of Leslie, as I mentioned. There's no minimum page count for this assignment. However, this is a big however, it must be thorough and thoughtful, okay? And complete. Referring to Leslie, students will, write up a mock treatment plan following the format included in Chapter 3 of Treatment Planning and Career Counseling. Okay, so you have this. You have make sure to include the following sections of the treatment plan: intake assessment, case conceptualization, goal development, constructing objectives, interventions, evaluation, and termination. Okay, so if you're thinking about this, what you're going to potentially do. Now, you may look at this a different way, and that's okay. But potentially, if you're using 2 theories or techniques, okay, this is going to fall, typically your technique of career counseling is going to fall within the interventions section, okay? So intake, case conceptualization, goal development, constructing objectives, and the interventions that will get you to a place of accomplishing the goals and objectives, and then your evaluation and termination, okay? Keep in mind that you may not have the entire information in subsets to speak to the certain aspects of this plan, so you may have to conjure up some of the details, such as what is to be included in the intake assessment and evaluation, and the following termination phases, okay? So for the intake assessment, students should follow the template. There's a template that you'll see for Gary, seen in his case in Chapter 12, which is different from what you see in Chapter 3. So you refer to both of them, okay? Gary is basically an example of Leslie in kind of the template that we see here in Chapter 12, but you're going to communicate your intake through, the final assignment will be communicated by way of what you see in the treatment plan that's in Chapter 3, okay? I hope that's clear. I know that there's some confusion around that. You're using what you find in Chapter 3 to respond to Leslie that's based in some forms on the template that you see in Chapter 12 from Gary, okay? So for each goal, make sure you include your clear objectives and interventions, okay? Include brief rationale regarding why you chose the specific theories, techniques, and how you see them benefiting Leslie, okay? So you have these goals and objectives that are tied to interventions, okay? So the case conceptualization on the whole is the same. The intake's the same. But as you're constructing objectives and you're doing your goal development, what are you hoping to accomplish with these 2 interventions or these theories, techniques that you're using, okay? What are the most, as you play career counselor, you won't be able to address everything. This won't be a full-on, typically I work with a client for 4 weeks at minimum. You won't be able to do that. I want to see that you clearly understand where you're headed and how you would do this, okay? So if you were to lay this out, you were to play career counselor, this is your chance to do that, okay? I hope this is clear. It's not going to be complete, right? A complete response to the assignment will be somewhere 7 to 10 pages, though there's not a page requirement. If you can do this in less, by all means, do it. I don't think you can, so I'll just give you that disclaimer. But if you can, by all means, do it. But remember, thorough, thoughtful, complete. Follow the outline that you see from Chapter 3 that's also in the syllabus, and you'll follow the template that's seen in the case of Gary, only you'll be referring to Leslie. All right. So if you have any questions, please feel free to email me, call me. I'll put my number in the bottom of this thing, so you can give me a shout if you need to. I think you're going to do great. But if there's some confusion, please let me know. I can help. All right. I'll come back with another video on Monday. Have a great rest of the weekend, and we will see you online.